pieces we're going to dive in. Also, takeaway number 2 are supportive environments, how to promote healthy attachments and relationships. Takeaway number 3, systems for support, how to meet your foster child's needs, addressing barriers, and identify and implement supports. And finally, number 4, social emotional development, how to support your foster child's social emotional development. So, sorry guys, let me switch over. I think I'm a little.
I gotcha.
Thank you.
I did warn her ahead of time that sometimes I lack a little grace when it comes to technology.
No worries. Every single computer is absolutely
I know.
different enough just to mess with you.
Well, and we've done this enough times that one might think that I'd have this completely down. So check that. I am going to go to
Right, so while we're moving through, okay. Perfect. So as Jared said, and as I had said earlier, I do have a few different, a little bit of a background in education, a little bit more. I have been an educator since 2007. I graduated from Chapel Hill ISD in 2007 and returned immediately to work as a paraprofessional and through the supports and lots of amazing mentors along the way. I was able to complete my education and receive my bachelor's in 2013 from SFA. Furthermore, I was able to complete a principal's preparation course, certification with the University of Texas at Tyler. So I have a background in educational leadership. I've taught every grade from pre-K all the way to 5th grade with curriculum writing in 6th grade, as well as working in art guide capacities and lots of different roles. So all of that to have a wonderful journey in supporting our children and giving our parents the resources that they need to support our children. I do have 4 wonderful children. My oldest is currently a senior, and he is graduating this year and will be going to UT Tyler with a major in nursing. There we go. And I have a sophomore, a freshman, and our little girl is a 7th grader at Chapel Hill Junior High. That's a little bit about me. I'd like to meet some of y'all. If anyone wants to go through and say hello. You want to start anywhere?
I'm Keely.
Nice to meet you.
You know it was gonna be her.
Very nice to meet you, Keely. Do you work here with CASA?
Yes, I'm a CASA supervisor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm Phyllis Bruner and I'm a volunteer.
I'm Joanna and I'm also supervisor here. I'm Johnny Lunsford and I'm the assistant program director for CASA.
I'm Amy McDonald and I'm the program director here.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Laura Beam and I am a supervisor also in Wood County and Smith.
Nicole Branch, supervisor in Smith County.
Katie Cooper, Van Zant County's K supervisor.
Jean Cox, 7-year volunteer.
Victoria Tenney, team coordinator.
So, Christine.
I'm Sonia Burris and I'm the community relations assistant here.
Wonderful. Medium.
I'm Deanne Colgrove and I'm one of the directors here at CASA.
Thank you so much. So thank y'all so much for introducing yourselves to me. I'm sorry. And thank you for your time again. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. So a lot of the times in education, we have a phrase that gets thrown around a lot and it means quite a bit to quite a lot of people. You have to Maslow before you bloom. So I was checking out a few of your resources online and I saw that y'all actually had a course over Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in a very big nutshell, I don't know.
Do it one more time.
Okay, so before we jump back to the video, we have a big pyramid that kind of just structures your basic human needs. So in that nutshell, again, before you can actually achieve high levels of questioning and high levels of learning, you have to take care of your basic needs. So anytime a child comes into your classroom, into your vicinity, anytime you're working with a child, as teachers, we're often asked to ensure that we have the following. So having your physiological needs met, ensuring that your child has their basic needs met: food, air, water, shelter, clothing. They have their needs in place. You can't learn when you're hungry. You can't learn when you're thirsty. Safety needs, ensuring that they feel that they have the ability to be in a space and to exist in that space without fear of retribution, fear of harm. And those are a lot of things that don't actually come into our thoughts, especially if you're not familiar with those experiences. Love and belonging, having friendships, feeling comfortable enough within yourself to be able to reach out and speak with someone. Esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, being able to feel good about yourself. And finally, self-actualization. So the desire to become what you can be. That's where creativity takes place. That's where learning can start to bloom. And so then, after all of these needs have been met, then we can go ahead and move on to Bloom's taxonomy. Within Bloom's taxonomy, this is something that is typically used in a classroom. And the reason I bring it out here is because a lot of the times when we're working with our children, it's kind of difficult to grasp. Why aren't they getting this? Why is this difficult for you? This is easy. It should be pretty standard. But again, you can't learn if you're hungry. You can't learn if you're afraid. You can't learn if you don't feel like you belong. There's a lot of little things going on in our little people's brains. And with my poor children, I always tell them, you're so brave. You are so brave growing up in this time, being a teenager during this time. All 4 of mine are teenagers at this moment. An exciting time in our household. Lots of vibrant energies. I would say attitudes. They're pretty great heads on their shoulders. So I think I'll hang on to them for a little bit longer. But it is that time that we're living in right now where there's so much going on. Back when we were growing up, no one could reach at home. If my daddy decided that no one was going to talk to me, well, by golly, no one was talking to me. And that's just how it was. Our dial-up internet only ran so fast and went so well. And if you didn't have your computer time that day, you didn't have your computer time that day. And it's okay. But nowadays, we have 24-hour access into the entire world, which is terrifying. So this is the reason I bring up Bloom's taxonomy and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you do have that looming cloud of worry, of fear, it's really difficult to move beyond that. I'd like to go back to this video, an oldie but a goodie. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Rita Pearson. Dr. Rita Pearson was an amazing educator, a huge advocate for children, and unfortunately, she's no longer with us.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, You know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise. You just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on a roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
So a lot of the resources, a lot of the information I'm about to share comes from an education lens. And that was done very purposely because I strongly believe that educators and parents live very parallel lives. You don't need to be a teacher to be a parent. You don't need to be a parent to be a teacher. But I found that over the years, being a mom has taught me to be a better teacher. Being a teacher has taught me to be a better mom. And hopefully today, since you're already champions, you realize that within yourselves lies such great strength and such an amazing power within you to be able to ignite that and to be there for your children and have the resources to do so. Back to our little pyramid. We're going to keep moving forward, but power of relationships. We know that children who are in foster care placement are not coming from idyllic situations, are not coming from the best of circumstances, and may not know how to have their needs met, or may have had to rely on themselves to have their needs met. So learning to unwind that, learning to teach them compassion, and learning to teach them to trust again. It's a massive, massive turning point in your life and in theirs. Every child does deserve a champion, and that's you guys. So they can then go on to master levels higher than they would ever believe possible to do. So we begin with takeaway number one: how to build that partnership with your child, educators, how to facilitate effective communication. And we're going to do that with 3 components: partnering with the foster child teacher, two-way communication, and parent organizations. Some innocuous things, some givens, some things that might seem like wouldn't really have a huge impact on your child. But we know that it takes a village to raise your child. A child that is with a foster care placement is a child that is needing a little bit of a bigger village, a little bit of more support. And how do we accomplish that? So we begin at the beginning. Upon enrollment, upon arriving to the school, upon the first time your feet hit those campuses grounds, meeting with everyone from the nurse, the registrar, your child's educators, administrators. You are their champion. You are their advocate. And that's terrifying sometimes. As a mom, sometimes I turn around and think, who trusted me to be in charge of 4 people? I mean, thank you, God. They're great, but it's a little terrifying at times. Teenagers will come home and pitch a fastball at me. Now, I'll be honest, a lot of the times they'll have a question, they'll make a remark, they'll talk about a situation, and I have to keep my poker face on and say, you know, I don't know how to respond to that. Give me a second, let me talk things over with your dad, and I'll get back to you. I always see their little faces kind of light up with that mischievous grin, like, we got her. We stumped her. We blew her mind. I'll never say it out loud, but I know those cute little eyes. But it is that. It is learning how to partner with anyone that can join your village. And one of the first people to join your village should be your child's educators. An ongoing system of support from home to school and school to home is vital. So asking those questions, what kind of services do you offer? If you have any concerns or you're not sure what their educational background is, what evaluations, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm concerned about, here's some background information. What can you do to help my child? And those are not always questions that pop up in our head because raising a child is so overwhelming. And that's the child, in my experience, that I created. There were times that I didn't know what to do, how to do it, or who to go to. Now, answering that phone call at midnight, 11 o'clock at night, and receiving a placement, even more jarring. You don't have a background with that child. That child is not someone that you've known since the beginning. So these questions are some to kind of tuck away in the back of your head and understand, hopefully, that your school is going to be one of your strongest allies and your strongest resources. Request a meeting for an end of a designated time. Enrolling the child, let's get back together within 2 weeks. I'd love to hear some feedback. I'd love to see what you're noticing. I want to be able to support my child at home the best that I can. Establishing that as the first expectation with your teacher, with your administrative team, whatever it may be, or whomever that you bring to the table as a part of your village, have that meeting set in stone. That way you don't have any, well, I forgot, because life gets in the way. Raising children is difficult. You want to meet their needs, have it established from the get-go. During that meeting, we kind of talk about it, have a few questions for her, just basic things. What was their initial starting line? What was their initial reading level? What are some concerns you're noticing? Here's what I'm seeing at home. Here's what you're noticing. What are some things that we can compare and go over? A lot of the times as a classroom teacher, I would hear, well, Johnny doesn't do that at home. We also have to keep in mind that Johnny doesn't have 22 other friends at home running around with a very tight schedule to keep. So it is keeping in mind that educator will see one perspective, you will see another perspective, but merging them and welcoming them to live and coexist together is going to be a wonderful support that you can bring into your child's life. Think about school resources. As a parent and family engagement coordinator, when I first went into this role last January, actually, January 2022, it was really interesting to see, just as a teacher coming out of a classroom, what resources are available to our community. What are some little known, sorry, they're barking. What are some little known things that I can utilize and I can implement to bring to our community? There are so many services that your school offers that you might not be aware of, and asking that question ahead of time, having them just kind of reach out to you and let you know if they don't have a full list ready. In Chapel Hill, we do have a current list of community resources. We have liaisons at all of our campuses. We have supports built in, but not a lot of people know it. And so it is having those intentional conversations surrounding your child and asking, what can you do to help my child? Asking those questions should not be something that you should feel intimidated by, because that's what schools are there for. We're there to support our children. And that team is going to be phenomenal to have. Ask about grading policy. What is your child's school student information system? I know in Chapel Hill, we work with Skyward. And as a teacher, it can be a little overwhelming. As an educator trying to dig data reports, it can be a little overwhelming. But thankfully, we have a parent side. You don't have to navigate all through that. Are you aware of your child's student information system? Because that's a quick way to check grade books, to check absences. Lots of times schools will have mass communication systems. Are you signed up for them? Having that information in your back pocket and from day one is going to keep you in the loop without having to chase down multiple avenues of communication. I know that communication just rolls straight through and can just overwhelm your phone. But if you're informed, you're prepared. And if you are informed and have questions, then you know where to go and who to go to. Let your teacher know what you're looking for in that relationship. Is this your first time with a child at this age? What are some developmental milestones you should be noticing? That's a conversation that not only can you have with your pediatrician, you can also have with your child's educator. As an educator of Texas, you do have courses that you go through in child development. What are some things we should be watching out for? What are some things that may appear and manifest and require further evaluation? Early intervention is key, and being explicit with your teacher and letting them know these are some concerns I'm seeing, but this and more. I have 4 children, as I mentioned. 2 I say my first two, maybe a mom. My second two, maybe a patient mom. And I say that because my two oldest are, my goodness, they were born little old men. They really were. They were in diapers and they would just have, I would have my coffee cup, and of course they had to have their coffee cup as well, except theirs had hot chocolate. And they just sit back and chat and enjoy the morning and just, you know, I'd have my college textbooks out and I would be reading mine and they had their little golden books with them. And the two younger ones are neurodivergent. They're both they both have ADHD, just like their mom. So I actually didn't get diagnosed till much later. As an adult, when I was recognizing its differences in my two oldest and my two youngest. And I say that all to say, at first, I would question myself, what am I doing? What is going on? And when I started having these concerns and my children entered school, I reached out, I sought that help from my coworkers. Are you noticing that baby has making these random choices, or maybe is not able to sit through this, that, or the other? And it was upon having those conversations that we were able to land upon the idea that we might need some testing. And so going from, oh my Lord, who is this? And who raised them? There's nothing wrong with them. They just needed more support. And that led my husband and I down a very long path of learning what ADHD looks like in a boy. What does ADHD look like in a little girl? Having that information and actively seeking that out has helped us understand our children and has helped us put into place different routines and different resources, little things that we'll talk on just a little bit later. But that would not have happened had I not sought that conversation out with my coworkers. Having that vital conversation went from, oh my goodness, my child is just not behaved. They might even just be plain and simple bad. What am I doing wrong? And it went from thinking in a reprimanding kind of mindset to a supportive mindset. My child is not bad. My children are not bad. They're wonderful kids. The most caring, compassionate children in the world. But had I not understood that every child develops differently and every child requires different supports, then it would have continued me trying to fit them into this mold and ensure that you are going to do this because I say so, and this is how we're going to do it. And they taught me differently. Two-way communication. A lot of the time, schools will send out so much information, so many emails, so many call-outs. Ask questions, reach out, join their Facebook, join their YouTube channel, follow them, find different communications that they have. We'll have our mass communications, of course, from the actual school system, but then teachers will individually have Facebook groups or Dojo, Class Dojo. That's an app where you can follow behaviorally, remind, talking points. There's so many different applications that our teachers use that having that conversation and reaching out and saying, I might have questions from time to time. Is it okay if I could have your email address, or could we exchange contact information? Something for them to know. Number one, you're an active part in their education and you're actively seeking out to support them. 9 times out of 10, that's going to bring such a comfort to your relationship and allow you to be able to have that reciprocal conversation with your child's educator. So when you do see something happen, if little Johnny, little Julie comes home and explains, I got sent out from recess, you hear one perspective. What happened? Because a lot of the times, back to Maslow's, the behavior, the actions behind the behavior, the thoughts behind the behavior will break your heart. Those behaviors are needs that aren't being met, either, for lack of understanding, which is very common. That's something that we went through when our little ones were a little bit smaller before their diagnosis. They weren't having a 2-hour tantrum because they didn't get their way. They weren't able to cope. They weren't able to self-soothe. They didn't have the strategies and tools within themselves because we didn't teach them. So this very morning, my daughter struggles so much whenever she's late somewhere. She hates being late. Absolutely cannot stand it, which is a great skill. It'll suit her very much later. But it could not stop taking over her thoughts.
all morning. She was upset, she was worried because we got to school 5 minutes, or we're going to get to school 5 minutes later than what we typically get. But for a child with ADHD, that is something that if they have their mind set on it, they hold very steadfast to it. Again, a great skill to have. She is going to make one heck of a litigator one day. She is very much into wanting to be a social justice advocate. She wants to be able to be a voice, but she's got to learn how to use her voice. So being able to tell her, hey, time out. What's our plan? If you're late, what's going to happen? Right? After you're late, we're just going to take you to school. This is going to happen. It's not a big deal. And so just having that conversation multiple times helped her understand it's okay. But if you don't have that understanding that we need to meet those needs, that's not her being whiny. That's not her saying, Mom, you're taking forever, which she did say. I kind of had to take a deep breath before I put my mascara. It was turn to her and tell her, hey, I gave her something to do. It occupied her mind for a little bit. We ran out the door and made it 5 minutes later than her normal time. But having that communication and reaching out to that teacher, Allison's struggling a little bit this morning. If she needs anything, please let me know. Email me. I got an email from her teacher an hour later. Everything's fine. She's doing great. Had a great morning. Had a productive class. Thank you for letting me know, because I was able to greet her at the door and kind of reassure her and give her that time to take a breath. So two-way communication is so vital. Transportation changes, school events, children in placement are not coming from a very stable and structured environment. And that safety and security is paramount for a child to be able to learn. And we don't always have that. If we're able to communicate those needs to your teacher ahead of time, we're able to implement a mass amount of supports. I've had parents who call me and say, hey, Billy had a really rough night last night. I'm just letting you know, and comes into the classroom and poor baby, bless his heart, missed breakfast. So took out my peanut butter crackers, was exhausted, took a nap behind my desk. And then finally, 20 minutes later, was ready to learn. Did he have a little bit more homework? Maybe this much. But he was able to catch up and start his day in a calm manner. But that wouldn't have happened had I not had that parent reach out to me and say, hey, Mrs. Perez, struggling. So those little pieces are those little tips and tricks that you can tuck into your back pocket and remind yourself that you are not alone. You have a system of support to support your precious baby. Changes to menu, those things you would think wouldn't be such an issue. But if you've previously discussed it and it is something that they're kind of dealing with, that's a traumatic response. That can be something that can really frustrate them. So communicating that to your child beforehand. Wonderful. Important upcoming dates, but establishing these pieces of two-way communication. And sometimes if you don't hear back from a teacher, it could be that they do have 120 students, that it is reaching out purposely and intentionally and consistently and saying, I'm seeking you out and I need help. Most of the time you'll have a teacher just excited to hear from you and excited to support your child. I know that sometimes emails get lost, so give them the benefit of the doubt. And if you need to go to the school and schedule a meeting, that might be best. And just say, these are some conversations we need to have. I need to be informed. I need to reciprocate. I need you to reciprocate communication. And sometimes it does take that push, but you are their advocate. You are their champion. Push and push hard. More often than not, you'll find that you really have to tap and that door opens wide open. Parent organizations, more people for your village, more people to help and to vent to and to grow with. A lot of people that are just truly there to support your school system, your student population, and essentially your children. We know it does take a village to grow yours. Reach out intentionally and form partnerships with other families. If this is a child who struggles a little bit making connections, encourage them, nurture them. And a lot of times, parent organizations provide that smaller environment. Being in a big school can be a huge adventure and quite a shock. But when you're offering a fishbowl for them to start off in with a smaller group of parents and parent organizations, it is something that can take the edge off of jumping into a new student population. So find out what events are going on, participate in your school, Join your student's PTO or PTA or even PAC. It's something that's going to help you in the long run. A lot of the times within our parent organizations, our parents are the first to know of any changes going on in schools. You have decision-making power within these groups. So it is your opportunity to get informed, to stay informed, and to fight for changes for your child. You might not know or be aware of different organizations, but that's also a good question to ask on your first day. How do I get involved? How do I stay involved? What are things that I can volunteer for? So let's discuss real fast. Are there any questions? Are there any little tidbits of feedback you'd like to give or conversations you'd like to have surrounding? Because I know it can be a little difficult making that first move. Are there any, oh, go ahead.
What about the ones that move more than once in a school year?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yes, ma'am, that is a jarring experience. Moving and that mobility is just taking your microenvironment away from you almost. So it is having that interaction and almost starting over. It stinks, but it is vital for our children to be able to reach out and say, here we go again. Now, this is that time. For educators, it's even more important to have those conversations because if your child's coming in at the beginning of the year, you're going to have an estimate of how you're going to handle things, how things are going to go, and you have that cushion time to get to meet them and engage with them in a less stressful time. That if you are meeting a new child coming in from, I don't know, probably 9th grade or something like that, something with a little bit more rigorous curriculum, it would be a great time to have those conversations and to really push for them. Because if you have a kid coming into class, you don't know them from Adam, and you don't know that that child's not just coming in because they just moved, they just bought a new house. Child's coming in and they need support and they need a lot of love and they need a lot of encouragement. And it is those kind words that can welcome a child in and make them feel a little bit more at ease. So those conversations, I would argue to say, are almost more important than the beginning of the year. Middle of the year changes can affect a lot of children, not just children with very typical upbringings, but children coming in and getting into a foster care placement or a new foster placement. It's terrifying. I know I struggle and I get very nervous. I'm a very anxious person. So new places. I know, Amy. I don't know if you noticed, I stumbled a little bit at the beginning. I get nervous and I get in my head, but I'm an adult. I have the skills in my little toolbox to cope with that. I have the ability to have a cup of coffee, have some conversation, kind of unwind and welcome myself into that. Children don't often have that. And it is being very purposeful with those conversations and relationships that we're able to kind of soften that blow a little bit. Thank you for your question. Is there anyone else that has any questions regarding school or academics or connecting with your school organizations?
Do you have an example of a parent organization?
Absolutely. So in Chapel Hill, we have several. At all of our campuses, we have our parent-teacher organizations, so our PTO. And then our junior high and high school, we have our parent-athlete committee. Furthermore, we have different decision-making committees, like a site-based decision committee. And those are parents who will be a part of a committee. They're a component. By law, you're required to have a teacher, an administrator, a community member, business member, parents, and the list goes on and on. But that right there has a direct responsibility to affect the decisions made on that campus. Funding that's going to be used, how are we using it? Are we going to get some sorely needed furniture that's adequate for that age group? Are we going to be spending that on instructional materials? That's your opportunity to kind of sneak in and have that decision and that voice and saying, well, what about these kids? My background is in bilingual education, and for a lot of educators who are monolingual, who are only in English and only instruct in English, a lot of the times it's almost straightforward. Here's the English copy. Good luck. Everyone's included. But sometimes we have to pause and remember, not everybody speaks English. Not everybody has access to that information. So being very purposeful to join those committees, that's going to be helpful. Not everybody has an experience with foster children. Of course, your front office will let you know, hey, here's this child coming into your classroom. Here's some background information. You might want to reach out to mom or dad and let them know what's going on, introduce yourself. They'll give you the basic information, But the person that has the most information is going to be you as their advocate, you as their champion. So reaching out and having that voice. Furthermore, we have our parent and family engagement advisory team where we get together and look for what resources parents need. So we meet monthly and we discuss what are some things that they need. We have our new newsletter coming out. That's something that directly came from a parent response. They said, well, we really don't know what kind of resources are around in the community. We don't know of events. We don't know of free things going on. What can we do? How do we get that word out to our families? Someone suggested a newsletter, so we started working together to create a newsletter. Having a parent family engagement webpage. So a lot of these big decisions were directly given by parents, given from parents. That opinion and that voice came from them. So it's just asking those questions. You have your athletic booster club, your band booster club, being involved and having those extra set of eyes, because inevitably you're going to get to know the other parents. And if you can't volunteer, then the other parent can volunteer. And that, as a part of your village, is that extra voice, is that extra hands, and goodness knows we need it. We absolutely do. Any other questions regarding academics? Let's go ahead and move forward. So supportive environments. How to promote healthy attachments and relationships, being open and responsive to your child's needs, setting clear boundaries and expectations, and opportunities for forms of self-expression. Supportive environment, we know, safety, no short corners, outlets covered. I know there's several different things that a foster home needs to have in place before a child is able to be in place. And I know there's trainings that are being received, There's also learning opportunities, such as this one. But there's also a few other things that you can do as a foster parent and you can do as an advocate to help your child feel a little bit more at ease and welcome in their environment. So verbal and nonverbal communication. I'll often tell my teenagers, it's not what you said, how you said it. And how you said it speaks so loudly. Are you conveying your message kindly? Because if you're not speaking to me kindly, my defenses go up. And when they stop and they realize, oh, it's kind of, I'm sorry, I had a bad day, Mom. So that clues me in and says, okay, listen, go take a seat, take a break, rest for a second. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes and we'll come and chat. I'll knock on their door, visit with them and say, are you ready? Not quite ready. So little things like that, we hear it every time. Not what you said, it's how you said it. So communication is so, so important for raising a child, especially when a child is experiencing major shifts in their life. We know that one little thing as adults can throw us off, and that's us as adults that have the systems and the coping mechanisms. The children who have been in foster placement or are experiencing foster placement for the first time can often have that uncertainty and have that feeling of foreboding and nervousness, and it's just a perfect recipe for a terrifying experience. So initially and eventually I learned a good poker face is worth its weight in gold. And that is kind of what we do have to be prepared for. Sometimes things come out and they're very jarring and you don't know how to react to them. You don't know what to say or what to think, because in this day and age, children are being exposed to myriad of things that are outside of our control, things that we hoped would never be at their fingertips, but technology is growing. So we must too also grow in our abilities to be able to communicate and to guide them. I always tell my kids, I'm not your boss. I'm your mom. My job is to teach you and hope to goodness that that clings to your brain. And when you're making a choice, I'm hoping it's a great choice. And they'll get annoyed, of course, because but it is that ability to say, I'd rather give you this information beforehand than assume that you know. So let's dive in. So creating those intentional relationships and setting aside time to connect with them. It could be once a day. It could be periodically throughout the day. It could be a one-on-one evening. Having that time to connect and say, you are my priority. You are my only focus. Sitting down with you is the most important part of my day today, or my most important part of my week. But having that time to sit down and to be able to communicate and ask questions. I often hear parents joke and say, well, I never know what's going on. If it was up to my child, they would tell me that they learned nothing at school. They did nothing today. Because we ask a huge question. And for a child, that can be very difficult to break up. Break it up into little pieces. What did you do in math today? I literally pull out their schedule because I cannot remember which courses they take sometimes. In elementary, it was a little bit easier. Now that they're in high school, they have career technical education, they have extracurriculars, they have their core classes, they have their language classes. It can be a little overwhelming. So I'll take out my seniors schedule. What'd you do in macro today? Oh, well, remember that test I was telling you about? It was a little frustrating. And they lean into that class period, into that set of information, so on and so forth for the rest of them. But being intentional and saying, I don't know your schedule, let me look it up real fast. Not only is that conveying to them that they're important to you, and that need to belong and to be loved is being met. And they'll be willing to share a little bit more. And talking to them about their faith and saying, is your message, the message that you're wanting to convey, being conveyed? Because what I'm seeing here and what I'm hearing here are not matching. Can we slow down? Can we take a break? Normalize asking for breaks. I know as an adult, when I get home, I always tell my children, hey guys, 10 good minutes. I need to decompress. I need to rest. Just give me a minute. Let me unwind from my day. And then hearing that kind of often is just a quick, we're going to go to our rooms, we're going to go and occupy ourselves other places and come back in a second. Now it's second nature to them. When they were little and clinging to me, would go a little bit crazy and just kind of say, okay, it's break time. We're going to go sit down and have a snack, and I would unwind quietly. But it's become a routine for them. It's become something that they expect. They go to their rooms. They ask for breaks. They ask for times to pause. When we're having really big conversations and they're getting too emotionally overwhelmed, it's now become routine for them to say, I need to pause. I can't finish this conversation. And instead of being, we need to solve this right now, we need to take care of this right now, give them space. Give them that time and be willing to read their emotions and willing to allow them to express their emotions. So think about the why. If your message here and here are not matching, something's going on. Something's happening. Something that you need to lean into and tune into. If they're willing to be vulnerable with you, encourage it. Thank them for their vulnerability. That is a tough conversation to have, buddy. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Thank them for being open and honest with you. A lot of the times we don't notice those things as adults because we do have a million things on our plates and a million things going on. But having that ability to be purposeful with your communication and thank them for reaching out to you, because sometimes kids will not, simply. It's funny because when we were little, we would spend the night over with our friends. We would run all through the house. We'd go outside. My friend had a little creek in the back. We'd catch balls, all kinds of great things. And now I laugh because my teenager will bring over his best friend and it's straight to the room. And the only reason I know there's an extra kid in the house is because there's more food missing. And it's communicated. But it is, they go into their little cave and they are texting each other back and forth. And I'll knock on the door and I'll check on them and ask, how's it going? It's going great. It's so much fun. And you haven't moved. Are you hungry? I'm good, I got chips. Are you thirsty? Got my water bottle. Let me know if you need anything. I mean, I'd often hear my mom complain. I'm sure she would be willing and wishing that we had these lovely things when we were little. But it is being able to have that communication and to lean into that. Again, respond, don't react. And try to separate the action from the child. You're not bad. You're not wrong. What you said was wrong. What you thought might not have been the best thing. Can we talk about it? How would you expect me to react? What would you like to see from me? What would have been a better choice? What would have been a kinder choice? Asking those reflective questions. instead of being very quick to be upset. And it's hard to not be upset. So sometimes you do as an adult have to take a break. Take that time together and just, we're not going to talk about it right now. We'll address it in a moment. But let's just take a deep breath and let's grab a drink of water. Let's have a snack real quick. Do something to kind of pause. A lot of the times, that initial reaction, that initial knee jerk, that jarring moment when something happened is a little frustrating and can be incredibly difficult to run through. But giving yourself that pause is going to allow for a lot of communication to take place. Make sure your child's needs are being met. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Last time my youngest was the last in the shower, of course, bless his soul, my youngest son. And of course, he was reminded 6, 7 times. I had a few things to prepare and we own a small business, so we're also working on a few things with that. So I check in and, all right, buddy, did you shower yet? Not yet, I'm going. Okay, perfect. Did you shower yet? Not yet, I'm going. Buddy, I need you to shower in 10 minutes. Got it, Mom. He comes out of his room, he's got his towel around his neck, and the child is perpetually shirtless. Bless his heart. He's been that way since he was born. I'm assuming, my fault in assuming, he showered. Did my job great, checked it off the list, we're gonna keep moving. It's 9 o'clock at night and I hear water in the bathroom. And of course I'm thinking, did someone leave the faucet on? No, it's my sweet little baby boy, barely showering. He's not a morning person. I'm not a morning person, but he really is not a morning person. And so this morning, when it was a little bit snippy, a little bit growly, tell him he's my baby bear. Huge, but he's my baby bear. And my first reaction, because I'm not a morning person, was to get onto him and to just be upset and frustrated because the way he reacted was not as kind as I'd hoped it would be. But I had to remember, what time did you get out of the shower? Okay, what time did you go to sleep? Okay. Do you see how it's affecting you this morning? Do you see how it's a little bit more difficult to get out the door? We left it at that. All right, bud. He is a little bit of a coffee drinker. Made his little coffee cup, grabbed it, went on throughout his morning. And so when we got in the car and had a conversation, the first thing that he brought up, I think I'm gonna go to sleep early tonight, Mom. Because now he's able to identify his needs. He's able to talk through things. He's able to have that, but it's with laying that foundation of openness. My first reaction several years ago would have been, you didn't do what I said, you're grounded. Again, thankfully, being a teacher made me a better mom, being a mom made me a better teacher. And I had the tools to kind of slow down and think, if this is what I'm doing in my classroom, we could be doing the same supports in my house. So learn from my mistakes and growing from them. We've been able to grow those tools of communication, and we've been able to kind of talk about meeting our needs and being kinder to ourselves in the morning. If you're going to sleep late, you're obviously going to have a horrible morning. If you're not preparing your things the night before, you're going to have a horrible morning. What are some things that you can do tonight to set yourself up for success tomorrow? Having those conversations and guiding those thoughts might be, well, you know you have school in the morning. You know you have to put things in your backpack. You know you need that permission slip. But it's also reminding them. Again, this is my son that has ADHD, and this is my son that I have to be very explicit with his needs and very explicit with reminders. He's doing such a great job, and I'm so, so proud of him. But as a big boy, he still makes big boy mistakes. And it's guiding him through those things that are being a little bit more helpful. With boundaries and expectations, logic and honesty. So respecting and maintaining boundaries is something that's taught and learned very carefully. And a child that has had the opportunity to practice those in a safe space will successfully do them. I don't know if y'all have seen the cute little boundary song that's out there. I just watched a TikTok video. It was the cutest thing. This little guy was asking for his mom to respect his boundaries and to let his hand go, to run into traffic. And she told him, of course, I can't let your hand go, baby. There's cars here, but that's my boundary. That's my boundary, he would say. And it has given him those moments of practice. But we do have so many resources available to us. We have Miss Rachel, we have all kinds of things available on YouTube alone. TikTok, I like to call mini professional development because there's so many avenues of information, so many tips and tricks on how to work with your children and on how to kind of talk them through things. I'm very thankful for those things because those resources weren't available to our parents. I would argue to say that if our parents had these resources in their proverbial back pocket, then that would have been something they could rely on. Because we grow from the experiences, we grow from conversations, we grow from interactions. And we didn't have that growing up. With boundaries and expectations, it is very hard because I was raised, you will do what I say when I say because I say. And that's very natural. I have a wonderful mother and a wonderful father, and they are just amazing parents, amazing grandparents, and I could only hope to be as amazing as them one day. But they didn't have those resources available. And so oftentimes as a kid, I would feel not listened to and not heard. As I would think that many of us didn't. But now we do have these resources available to us to give us that avenue for information, that highway to that internet, and to learn that we can glean nuggets of information from these many professional developments. Creating those times to sit down and to talk about a boundary. What does a boundary look like? How do we establish them? Why do we have them? And how can you place your own boundaries? They exist in 4 areas: physical, mental, material, and emotional. So I really love this quote. As a foster parent, you are in the unique position of helping a child identify and enforce boundaries that may not have been adequately defined before. Most often, when they grow older, they will respect and value your gentle guidance in these areas. So we think about that. I always like to say, or I always hear a teacher's voice in my head, my child will never do that. My child will never this. My child will never that. You're absolutely right. I'm so happy for your child because they wouldn't. They have a mom, they have a dad, all of their needs are being met, all of the support is in place. Your child would never. But not every child has that. Not every child has a safety net below them. And if a child is coming to you from a foster placement, you are their safety net. You are there to catch them when they fall. You're their soft place to land. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be difficult interacting with them. As I said before, parenting and teaching are often parallels. So every single year you get a new group of kids. You bond with them, you set your boundaries, you set your expectations. And at the beginning, you might bump heads a little bit, but by the end, you have the most beautiful relationships. I still have kids coming back to me that have graduated, and they just have the best stories. Sometimes I have to think a little bit hard on their names and which grade I had them in. But it is that connection that we form by establishing boundaries, by establishing high expectations, and telling them, I love you enough to set a high expectation. I'm not going to throw you into the deep end. I'm going to help you. But by the end of this year, by the end of your time with me, we're going to have this down pat. It's going to be great. And encouraging them to have their own voice is something that can help. So some steps in setting up a boundary that could assist. Clearly identify your boundary. Clearly identify. My kids will often roll their eyes at me. Just my favorite thing. It's great. I don't know who taught them that. Must have been their father. But I always will tell them something repetitive or something they've heard. I know, Mom, I know. But I follow up with a question. Would you rather I assume you know? And then you forget because I don't know, you're human. And offer you encouragement. Or would you rather me just start grounding you and give you a consequence? And of course, they'll give you the first option. Often it'll be a chore or something small and just minute. But giving them that established boundary, I need this, or giving them a task and clearly saying, I need it done by blank time. If it's something that doesn't have a time limit, then I'm not going to expect them to jump up and do it because it's an adult. If we're going to say, hey, go wash those dishes, I'm kind of tired right now. Can I do it? Do I need to do it right now? We'll have dinner in an hour. probably best if I do it. But if it's the end of the day and I just need 10, 20 minutes to relax, I'm gonna do that and then I'll get to it. But I'm not going to expect for my children to jump up and to complete a task because I say so. I'm going to keep their emotions in mind. I'm going to keep their feelings in mind and what they've been through. I know they've had a long day at school. They're not going to want to do chores right away. But if I've said, hey, we have to leave and be at X place by X time, then yes, we're going to prioritize things, but that's with clear defined information. And that's more of a task than a boundary, but clearly outlining your needs and clearly outlining your expectations. It's going to cut down on communication issues. Understanding why you need that boundary. Being straightforward. Don't apologize for explanations or give long explanations. This is my boundary. This is my boundary. This is what we need to do. Use a calm and polite voice. Start with tighter boundaries. It's always easier to start a little bit tighter and loosen up as you go. Address boundary violations early. Be thoughtful and be purposeful with your directions. Don't make it personal. Use a support system and trust your intuition. Encouraging your children to be themselves. Every single child is unique, and that includes foster children. Give them plenty of opportunities for voice. Have them ask a lot of questions. And sometimes it's hard for children to define their favorite or what they like. Give them an option of 2 or 3. If they say, I don't know, offer them more choices. This helps them develop their communication skills. I don't want to go repetitive one. I'm going to move a little bit forward. Takeaway number 3. How to identify your foster child's needs, address barriers, and identify and implement supports. Beginning with creating a safe space, creating routines together, giving them choices, and celebrating creativity. So as I said, you are their soft place to land. You're the champion, you're their encouragement. Creating a soft space, a soft place to land, a safe place to be, does not just incorporate the physical, the actual room, the actual space, but creating a place where your child feels safe to share their emotions and express themselves. So somewhere comfortable. Have your child assisting and personalizing it, whether it be some vinyl stickers on the wall, something to say, hey, this is a little piece of you and this is your choice. This is your area to calm down, to decompress. Make it beautiful. Make it your happy place. Ensure that they feel comfortable and know where they can access toiletries and other needs. If it's readily available, then they'll feel a little bit more inclined to be welcome to it. If it's something that is tucked away and hidden, they might assume that that's something that's not for them. And children won't ask questions. Our brains do an amazing thing, which fills in a lot of spaces for us. This is where assumptions come into place. And by eliminating assumptions and having those open conversations, you're eliminating a lot of barriers in communication. So create and find a predictable routine. If every single day you're noticing that mornings are a bit chaotic, what can we do tonight to prepare for tomorrow? Giving them that time to kind of think and to pick out their information. My little girl struggles with eating breakfast in the morning. The medication that she takes to kind of help her focus throughout the day eliminates her appetite, and we would get really worried. So she prepares for breakfast the night before. She often makes a little protein shake with a peanut butter sandwich, and she will not change. That is the only thing she'll eat right now. We go through phases, but her preparing them the night before will help us the day after. Including them when making decisions and engaging in conversations daily. Having this ability to go over your predictable routine. Having the ability to discuss things. It gives them a little bit more of that feeling of, I have a choice into the decisions that we're making, and it gives them that comfort. Again, routines and choices. Safety and stability in creating a routine. Write it out. We would often get upset and frustrated with each other when creating chores, when finishing our chores. And finally, I just gave up. We're going to do chores. I need to know what you're responsible for. And there's too many of us for me to just say, who's on dishes again? We have a chore chart. There's so many templates available online. Googling a simple chore chart, and the 6 of us each have a unique chore for the week. I think this week I'm on laundry, my favorite. But right next to that chore are the expectations. I have to wash a load every single day with 6 people. That's a lot of clothes. I have to ensure that I'm switching the laundry from washer to dryer and from dryer to basket. Sometimes it makes it out of the basket, sometimes not, but that's okay. We do have our established information for each chore. Dishes, unload, reload, all the good things and all the tiny minute details that you wouldn't think that need to be explained. But for a child struggling with disability, or even a child who's neurodivergent, having those explicit chores and tasks outlined takes the guesswork out of it. Try to time things consistently. If it's something that you need to have accomplished before 9 o'clock at night, say at 8 o'clock, set an alarm. Have them set an alarm if they have a phone. Use your tools and technology to guide you. Prepare for some pushback because routines and choices, so it's not something that's natural to everybody, especially if you have a child who is struggling and just not in that stable environment. Readjusting is a huge issue for a lot of children. And that's with children with safe and supportive environments. A child coming out of an environment that might not be safe is not going to be as readily comfortable to lean into routines. But celebrate their creativity. Celebrate their growth. Encourage them to ask questions. Why is not a bad word. And I always tell my kids, if you need to know, tell me you need to know. I'm an adult. Sometimes my brain thinks you already know. But tell me, and I'd be happy to answer those questions. If I can't talk to you right now, text it to me. I'll get right back to you. Nurture their curiosity. Provide opportunities for them to be creative and to learn about something new. Teach them to solve a problem in multiple ways. We've all heard that age-old adage, there's more than one way to skin a cat. If you're able to give your child that confidence and that ability to explore different ways to solve a problem, you're equipping them with those problem-solving abilities that are going to serve them now and later in life. Create a creative space for them. It's okay to be messy, but we do have to clean. Give them that routine, display their work, and have them feel proud of what they're doing. I literally have an essay taped to my refrigerator of my senior's work. He was so proud. It was his dual credit class. I can't even remember what it was about. It was just lengthy. But he got a great grade. And my goodness, he pulled it out. I did it. Yes, you did, my man. And where do I put it? I need to move some of my old stuff off the refrigerator. And to this day, at 18 years old, we are still posting work on our refrigerator. You should see the amazing things that come from my little girl, all kinds of scribbles and pages ripped out of journals that I do have to ask. Is your teacher okay with you ripping pages out of your journals? The answer is no. But we take and we fix and we move on. We're going to move on to the last little piece and we'll have a little discussion at the end. I do apologize, but it's a lot of information to share. Social and emotional development. How to support your foster child's social and emotional development, developing a safe space to discuss emotions, and developing emotional intelligence. Timing is everything. As an adult, I don't know about y'all, but if I'm frustrated, that is not the best time to have a conversation with you. Nervous, I get irritated, and it's a huge thing. But being able to kind of sit back and take a minute has been helpful. So some tips include asking them if they'd like to vent, if they would like a suggestion or advice. Try not to rush them when they share. Thank them for sharing and listen to them. Try to get a good understanding of what sad looks like for them, what worry looks like for them. Because the way you express something, the way I express something, the way everyone expresses something is completely different. And identifying feelings. So knowing feelings helps you learn and notice what leads to them. Not everything is going to be so readily evident. I got onto my son at Ross as we were shopping, and I didn't get onto him, not in a typical sense. I told him to come out so I could see his pants. But for him, for whatever reason, even though the child is perpetually shirtless, it was embarrassing. And he didn't want to come out. There was a whole slew of people because it was back to school and everyone was rushing to grab their clothes. But for him, that was embarrassing. Did it really matter? Not really. He could have very easily just texted me a picture, but taking that time to understand why he reacted upset. why he, Mom, I don't want to. I understand. I get embarrassed of doing a lot of things that people would say, that's not anything, no big deal. But leaning into their understanding and helping them notice their feelings. What caused that reaction? When are you noticing your reaction? Say how you feel. Learn the names of more emotions. Having an emotion wheel. I don't know if you've seen this. On this slide, there is one suggestion. I love to use this emotion wheel for 4 different levels, going from a very complex, happy or very simple, happy and sad, and then stemming from there into a little bit more deeper conversations. Having them notice what they're feeling. You're not angry, you're disappointed. You're hurt, you feel betrayed. You're not sad, you're overwhelmed. And helping them understand that there's more than just happy and sad, and there's more than just 3 emotions. You can feel a bucket of emotions all at one time. You can be excited and terrified and nervous and worried. You can be overwhelmed. You can be tired and just feel plain old negative, listless, upset. But practicing self-awareness with yourself and then teaching that and sharing that with your child, being open about your feelings. But I had a horrible big thing. I got all kinds of things on my plate. I feel behind. And today I'm not feeling very successful and I'm kind of doubting myself. I just came out of the classroom. I was recruited for this position, which should make me feel amazing. But sometimes you get those feelings of inadequacy. You get those feelings of, do I really, really belong here? I bet X or Y person could do it 10 times better than I could. What made me so special? But sharing those thoughts helps your child feel like they're not alone in their own feelings. Helps them kind of develop that inner voice within themselves. I'm feeling this. Now that I've identified it, I can work through this. And you're there to guide them. Just some tools. An emotion wheel was amazing to have in the classroom. There's also emotion charts with emojis. Little ones especially love that because today I'm feeling the angry face or I'm feeling the hard eyes. But giving them that space to identify. Notice feelings in art, songs, and movies. Sometimes it's not easy to identify your feelings. Sometimes it's hard to kind of take a long look in the mirror and say, this is it. This is what I'm feeling. Sometimes I don't know how I'm feeling. And I'm just in a little gray blob of, But being able to take a moment and really settle into my feelings and allow myself to feel them kind of helps guide my thoughts. Some wonderful conversations can come from teaching emotional intelligence. And again, there's so many resources available. Just a quick search on YouTube of emotional intelligence in children, how to help your child develop emotional intelligence. Quick searches are going to bring you tons of tips and tricks. So, questions, comments? Again, at the end of this, we're almost to the end. You'll have my email. I believe you have it also in the little slide copies. Please feel free. I'm always here. And thank you so much for your dedication to the children of East Texas. So I did not have that slide in there. I apologize. Let me get you my email if you want to write it down. Again, I'm Ellie Perez from Chapel Hill ISD, and my email is Perez, Pereze, at chapelhillisd.org. I'm always available. It takes a village, and I'd be happy to be a part of yours. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.